Get some analysis. Paul Kelly joins me, editor-at-large at The Australian, as he does every week. Paul, the Nats and the Liberals, where are we, in your mind, in terms of a climate deal?
Well, Kieran, the deal is not done. The saga goes on. We'll see what happens today. It may take a few more days, though, to sort this out. The attitude of Barnaby Joyce, the Nationals leader, is the National Party room must own this decision. Scott Morrison needs a majority of the Nationals to come on board for the deal. And what will be fundamental is the way the Prime Minister has responded to the Nationals' demands. We do, however, know the broad contours of the deal. That is, it's net zero at 2050, and it's no greater ambition when it comes to emissions reduction at 2030. That is an agonising political compromise, and there are two issues here. At stake is the survival of the Morrison government, whether it can make this policy transition, and related to this is whether the coalition parties can change policy on climate change without destroying themselves internally, as they've done so many times in the past.
Paul, what's the outlook for Glasgow? The Prime Minister departs Thursday night for the G20, then on to Glasgow. How are those climate talks shaping up, some of the most critical of recent decades?
I think there's been furious lobbying around the globe, Kieran, to ensure that as many leaders from G20 countries as possible actually front up to Glasgow. And this has been a problem. It may well be resolved, but it seems at this stage as though the president of China won't be going. The Russian president won't be going. Leaders of Brazil and Mexico are probably not going. India's leader, Prime Minister Modi, announced late Friday that he would be going. Look, the point to make here is that this issue of climate change involves competing interests among different countries. And these competing interests are underpinned by different politics from country to country. So there's not one universal view about climate change, which you might imagine, given the universal nature of the science. The other point to make, of course, is, and this is well established, leaders are in the habit of making promises about targets without a plan as to how to get there. Now, I think there's no doubt at all that Scott Morrison will be vulnerable because he is not increasing Australia's target of 2030, and to a large extent, that's what the Glasgow conference is about. Having said that, we should point out that Australia's actual performance on emissions is better than the average among OECD countries. The Energy Minister, Angus Taylor, has made it clear there is no way Australia will sign up to a hastened timetable for the shutdown of the coal industry. The bottom line is Scott Morrison goes with a big concession at 2050, but it will not be enough to satisfy the Glasgow meeting.
Paul, back home now and on the opening up, how are things tracking at this stage, do you think?
It's very early days, Kieran, but there are reasons to be optimistic. I mean, Melbourne has just opened up. Sydney's been opened up for a fortnight, and it's not looking too bad. Case numbers continue to fall, and we have not seen an explosion in hospitalisation rates, and that's really important. We've seen Qantas announce that international flights will begin again from the 1st of November. So I think these omens are encouraging. This is enormously important to the Prime Minister because his entire political position depends upon a successful opening up. Now, as I said, it's early days. So far, so good.
And let's hope that continues for a much brighter summer, Paul. And finally, Alan Tudge, the Education Minister, I spoke to him a bit earlier on a range of issues, including quite a strong intervention when it comes to the draft national curriculum. What do you make of his argument on this?
Tudge is a really interesting federal education minister, Kieran, and what he's done is he's accepted responsibility for the crisis in the Australian classroom in a way no previous federal education minister has done. And Tudge is focused on two things. the way children are taught and what they're taught in terms of the curriculum. Now, we know there's a crisis. We know there's falling standards in relative terms. And Tudge has taken a stand on this. Now, what he said about the revised national curriculum, when he initially got it and saw it, he said, "This is not acceptable. No way. We've got a crisis. We need higher standards, not lower standards." What he was particularly concerned about was the impossible nature of the document. It was 3,500 pages. This is supposed to help teachers. This was utter madness. So he wanted it reviewed. He made it clear it wasn't acceptable. He's been briefed on the review. He hasn't seen the review. What he said on Friday was, okay, it's gone from F for fail to C, but still not good enough. He wants Australian children to get A+. He's pointed out the document is still about 1,400 pages. In New Zealand, the document is 120 pages, designed to actually help teachers. He wants a greater focus on content. I mean, he made the point that we've been in a situation before where children in Year 2 primary were not taught times tables, but they were taught how to determine whether or not a statue was racist. He's had a lot to say about the history curriculum and made it clear the task in the school is to focus on how Australia evolved as one of the most successful liberal democracies in the world. There's a lot to come on this debate, but we should welcome the fact we've got a federal education minister tackling this issue.
Paul Kelly, appreciate it. As always, I'll talk to you during the week.
Thanks, Kieran.